Incidentally, most of the best known harp excerpts are also the ones found on harp audition lists, especially orchestra audition lists. So I thought it might be fun to go through and rank all of these from my least favorite to my favorite. Let's do this. Hi, I'm Danielle Kuntz. I'm a new music harpist and harp notation coach, and I'm here to help you learn how to write for the harp with creativity and confidence. Now, sometimes the best way to learn how to write for the harp is to study the harp literature, see what works in the historical literature, what doesn't, and seek to continue improving from there. So we're going to do that as we look through some of these really awkward and not our favorite excerpts. Now, just a little disclaimer, this is my own list. Other harpists may have a different ranking, different preferences on their lists. This list also focuses on the excerpts that are generally found on professional auditions, excerpts that are found on college auditions or semi-professional orchestras are sometimes a little bit different. Also, every orchestra tends to use slightly different excerpts, so these tend to be the most common ones, but every audition list will be a little bit different. Also, just for the sake of narrowing it down, I am not including solos or concerti, even though those are usually found on harp auditions as well. Last disclaimer, these excerpts are not audition ready, so please be nice. I am doing the best with the time that I have right now. So I am going to rank each excerpt with the factors of playability, the orchestration, just how this excerpt works in the context of the actual piece, and then enjoyment. Some pieces are just more fun to play than others. So we're going to start from my least favorite, going up to my favorite, and my least favorite, I don't think many harpists will disagree with me, is Dance of the Seven Bells from Strauss's Salome. Now, while this is technically an opera excerpt, this also shows up on a lot of symphony orchestra auditions as well. This piece is just kind of notorious. Now, this sounds very innocent, but I will warn you, this section has an accelerando, so as the piece gets faster, the notes get bigger, spans get bigger, and it gets really crazy and really risky at the very end. Okay, so the ranking, I give this as far as playability at number 2. The jumps are just huge and unnecessary, in my opinion. Orchestration, it's a 3. It's not horrible. It's actually kind of cool, and you can actually hear the harp in this, believe it or not. And as far as enjoyment, I'm sorry, it's a 1. It's not really that fun to play. Okay, on to number 2. Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique is another notorious excerpt. The part I just played, not that bad, but it does get worse from there. So as far as ranking, I would give it a playability of a 2. Yes, we practice this all the time because it is literally on every single orchestra audition. That being said, it's awkward. It's not particularly friendly to the modern harp. As far as orchestration, I would give it a 3. It's not as bad as it could be. The harp does have some really neat moments in the piece, but a lot of it is just over orchestrated for the amount of notes and the difficulty of the harp part. And as far as enjoyment, I would give it a 2. It's not as terrible as number 1, but it's still down there. All right, number 3. Now, a lot of harpists might be surprised at why I rank Donizetti's Lucia de la Mer, the harp cadenza, so low on my list. It's not that bad. Part of the reason why I rank it a little bit lower is because there's just not a lot of consistency in how harpists and conductors expect to hear the actual little cadenza section, the actual opening of this. Now right here, the score just has a... But historically, harpists have embellished that little cadenza within the cadenza a little bit. Salzedo has a version of the cadenza that's a lot. Grajinet also has one. A lot of harpists will come up with their own. But it's a little, you don't really know what an orchestra director might want to see. Also, if you were to actually play this in a production of Lucia, you would be working with the music director on, you know, how long they would want it, what sort of style they would want it. So playing this in audition, it's hard to know what kind of flexibility you have. I tend to just do a slightly more embellished A7 chord rather than doing something that modulates all over, but that's just my personal preference. As far as playability, I would give this a 3. It's a little bit pianistic. It's very classical in the way that it's written. It's not horrible, but it's not my favorite. As far as orchestration, I think it's a 3. It's not, for that style and that era of music, it's not too bad. And enjoyment, it's not my favorite thing in the world. So I'll give that a 3 too. All right, number 4. So this section is from Verdi's La Forza, the overture. In this specific section that I just played, the harp is accompanying the clarinet solo. When this section comes back later, then the harp is accompanying strings with the melody with a slightly different version. I like to call this too many right hand arpeggios. This is just something that you have to make sure you're really loose when you're playing, just so you don't really risk tendonitis. You have to be really careful when you're practicing it. I tend to practice this, slow and then fast, but make sure I play it fast enough so that my hand learns how to stay loose and relaxed. The second half of this is where it gets a little bit dicier with a lot of the pedal changes. There's a lot of really awkward intervals in there that just are not very harp friendly. So while the beginning is fine, it does get a lot worse from there. So as far as playability, I'll give it a 3. Compared to some of the other parts, it's not that bad. It's still not great. It's just very heavy with the right hand. It doesn't really let the harp ring the way that you would want it to. And a lot of the intervals in the second half of this section are not to be recommended. As far as orchestration, it's a 4. It's actually a really lovely pairing of, in the first half with the harp and the clarinet, and then the second half with the harp and the strings. It sounds really, really nice. As far as enjoyment, I'll give it a 3. It's not the worst excerpt to practice. I'll put it that way. Number 5. If you're talking about harp excerpts, you really can't not mention the Adagio from Mahler Symphony 5. This is basically harp accompanying the strings. So this is, string melody accompanied with harp arpeggios. There's nothing particularly problematic with this. It's great. It uses the harp really well. The orchestration's thin enough so that the harp really comes through. The balance is really nice in the excerpt. The reason I don't love playing this in auditions, it's so hard to play without hearing the melody. It's not the same. You have these long rests that you still have to count through because it's not quite long enough to skip through the sections. It's just not my favorite one to play. So as far as ranking playability, I'll give it a 4. It is a little tricky when you're playing in the very lower register. That's something that a lot of harpists, when they learn this, they're a freshman in college, and it is difficult to not buzz on this, but overall it's written pretty well. As far as orchestration, again, I'll give it a 4. I think it works, the balance is really nice and the harp is used really effectively. And then enjoyment, people will disagree. I give this a 3. I don't like practicing it for auditions. It's a lot more fun to actually play in orchestra than to just be practicing solo and playing it solo. It's not a solo, it's an orchestra part. Number 6. So the cadenza from Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker, from the Waltz of the Flowers, I don't think I've ever seen an orchestra audition that does not include this. It's on everything. It's one of those that, you have to be able to play it well without any preparation, and if you can't play it well, you're kind of not in orchestra. That's just the way it is. We play it so much, it's sometimes hard to play just because you've played it so much, and it's hard to find something fresh to be able to play it with passion. But there's nothing, we have rewrites, I'll tag the video I made about it that goes through some of the rewrites, and this harpists always use the rewrites for auditions. It's just, performance practice at this point. So as far as ranking, playability with the revisions, it's a 5. Before the revisions, I would give it like a 2, just because it's clunky as written, but with the performance practice, it's a 5. Orchestration, 4. The opening where you have the arpeggios with the oboe, that's really nice, and then you can't argue with orchestration with a harp solo. Enjoyment, a 3. If we didn't play it as much as we do, it would probably be more enjoyable. Sorry. Number 7. Harpists will probably be annoyed that I'm putting Ravel Tzigane, the cadenza from Tzigane, ahead of the Nutcracker. I just find it a little bit more fun to play. Maybe it's just because I don't play it as much. I don't know, but I kind of dig it. Yes, it's one of the most difficult excerpts that we have. Number 1, because you're sitting for a long time and then you have to just jump in with this, which is difficult. But it's very flashy. It's very over the top, which the whole Tzigane, that's what it is. I find it fun to play. So as far as playability, yes, it's a 3. We've had to tweak some things. There are a lot of pedals in there. Hopefully you can see that with the pedal cam, having to go back and forth between sections. The pedals have to be timed perfectly, otherwise you get some nasty buzzes. Not all of the patterns lay quite right, but it's not so bad that we can't make it work. Orchestration, it's a 5. It's a really cool moment where the violin drops back from its own solo cadenza into these double stop trills to really accompany the harp, and that builds into when the orchestra comes in. I give it a 5. I love it. And enjoyment, 4, to be honest. It's very nerve-wracking, but also very fun. So that makes it a solid 4. Number 8. So Debussy's La Mer is probably one of the best examples of using 2 harps in orchestra. Debussy's orchestration just in general lets the harp use its strengths in orchestra without forcing through its weaknesses. There's lots of big moments for the harp in this piece. Different orchestras will ask for different excerpts just because there are so many special moments here. As far as playability, I give it a 4. We do have some little tweaks that we make in it with in harmonics just to shift some pedals around, but nothing too bad. Orchestration, a 5. I like how it works in the piece. Enjoyment, I'll say a 3. Again, it's a piece that is a lot more fun to play in orchestra than to play this as a solo. Number 9. So the cadenza from Britten's Young Person's Guide is iconic for a reason. It's one of the few cadenzas that is a little bit more out there. It's a little bit more of a bold statement rather than just a bunch of arpeggios. I love Britten's writing in general. Honestly, the harp part from the Young Person's Guide is not his best harp writing. He definitely improved after his collaboration with Ocean Ellis, but it's still really fun to play, and it gives the harpist a chance to show off a different kind of sound than we usually do in other excerpts. So playability, I give it a 3. We do have to make some enharmonic tweaks. I explained this more in one of my earlier videos. I'll link that here. Orchestration, I give it a 5. I think it works. Of course, when it's a solo cadenza, of course it has to be a 5. Enjoyment, I'll give it a 4. There are some little awkward things that are a little bit more annoying to navigate, but overall it's fun to give this kind of sound. Now, before all the harpists come after me for making Stravinsky's Symphony in 3 movements my number 1, I will just say it's one of those pieces that's awkward, but it's awkward because it's Stravinsky. It's not awkward because it's atrocious harp writing. I think it's really fun to play. I love playing it with the recordings. It's one of those pieces that is kind of fun to prepare for auditions. I like it. I like it a lot. The harp plays a really good role in this piece. The part is usually very exposed, and it's adding a lot of color into this piece, just in different ways throughout the movements. Usually in auditions, you will play some excerpts from the second movement. The harpist has it in the first movement, so you'll play some excerpts from the second movement, and then maybe something from the third movement. As far as ranking, playability, again, it's a 3. Yes, there are some really awkward things in this. Orchestrationally, a 5. It's the harp adds so much color. It's great. And as far as enjoyment, for me personally, it's a 5. I know other harpists will disagree, but it's so fun to play. That's why it made the top of my list. So there it is. There's my least favorite to most favorite harp excerpts that are usually found on auditions. If you agree with this ranking, or if you don't agree with this ranking, let me know in the comments. If there's other excerpts that are not on this list that you would like to see ranked, let me know. Maybe we can make a part 2 of this. And then finally, if there's any excerpts in this list that you would like a more detailed video on, let me know that in the comments as well. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe. I have more videos coming for you, and if you would like to stay in touch, I invite you to subscribe to my Harp Tips email list, where I send out 1 to 2 emails a month with specific harp writing tips to help you level up your harp writing. Until next time, I will see you later.